Today we'll be talking about temporary school options for children in health crisis. I'm Jason Limback, CEO of Undivided. Today's topic hits close to home for my family, so I'm eager to jump in. I'm here with Lindsay, as always, who heads up our content and community teams at Undivided. Hi, Lindsay.
Hey, everybody. Hello.
And we're kicking off our first Unite and Conquer conversation with Undivided parents. She's an OG parent at Undivided, Leeza Woodbury. Did I say that right for your mother-in-law?
Yes, Woodbury. Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone.
And we have our IEP specialist, navigator, and parent of 3 boys with disabilities, Lisa Carey. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hey, Lisa. And today we are very lucky to dive in with you, Leeza and Lisa. So, Leeza, to start us out, as much as you're comfortable, we would love for you to share what's going on with your son and how it's affecting him at school.
Yeah, so the school year has been interesting coming back from, distance learning. I was super excited coming into the school year because back in May, we had our kindergarten transition meeting, and I had this amazing IEP in place with all of these accommodations and services. And I was so proud of myself, and I fought so hard. And we start the school year, and it just kind of went downhill. But anyway, so my son's in the last couple of months has started experiencing some health issues that have really impacted his ability to basically function in the gen ed setting. And it's become really challenging and extremely stressful for him. And so I guess my question today, and if you need more context, just let me know, is, I want to ask the school, can we cut back services? And that is kind of terrifying me because I don't want them to think I'm admitting that what we asked for isn't working. Is there a way to ask if we can either temporarily put on hold services, pause them, or ask the team to just be more sensitive to how my son's feeling at school? Maybe change placement, temporarily pause speech or OT, just kind of these extra things going on while we get him to a more stable place with his health to where he can, be more present at school, but knowing that there's that concern in the back of my mind that, 5, 6, 7 months down the road, when we're ready to kind of readdress moving him back to his original IEP, the IEP team might be like, oh, well, his current placement is now working. We don't need to go back to those old services. So I just want to know what options there are. How can I approach it with the team so that they know that my expectation is I want to go back to the original, amazing IEP at some point. Any help you have is appreciated.
And I know, just knowing the work that you did to get to that point and how you advocated to get the setting right and to really lean into your son's strengths, loves, and needs. So I can understand why you have the concerns. You don't want to lose that, but it sounds like you, because of the health issues that have come up, you want to make adjustments temporarily, but preserve the setting that you really advocated for fiercely for him.
Right. And I think that the biggest concern is the new setting that I want him to be in will be a very good fit for him. It will be more comfortable, more sensory friendly, as opposed to the gen ed classroom. He is going to do well. I know that, and his team will see that. But the mom side of me is well, I know my son can also thrive in gen ed when he is in a healthier place, but I'm just concerned that they're going to get stuck on no, we should keep him in a sped class because he did well in it, instead of allowing him the opportunity to be challenged in gen ed later.
Lisa, I would love for you to walk us through all of the options, really, or what are the main options that Leeza should be? She's already laid out some things she's thinking about, so
right.
Walk us through it.
Well, the good news right now, as far as the pausing services or decreasing services question, right? So the good news is because of COVID, the schools have been doing this a lot for families that said Zoom wasn't a good fit for them, right? A lot of our kids could not Zoom speech or Zoom OT, right? So a lot of families did pause. And when we returned to school, the last signed IEP is what was the controlling document, right? Your case is a little bit different, but I mention that because it, to tell you that schools have had some experience with this recently. So it's not like the school most likely won't feel like, oh, we've never done this. What you can do is, the main concern for our school when you want to pause a service is that a parent may come back at them later and ask for compensatory services because they didn't provide a service. So really, the best way to approach it is tell the school in writing that you want to pause the services due to, you mentioned your son had health issues. So due to your son's health issues, you want to pause the services, and put in there that you intend to resume the services when he's doing better. And you can even put a note that you will not seek comp ed services for missed services due to parent pause. And just call it a pause, or a temporary pause. And that should alleviate any concerns that parents would have. And I also wanted to add one quick thing, is the concern about them taking away the service completely. The only way that they can take that service away or change the minutes in your IEP, to take that service away, they would have to assess your son and show the service is no longer needed, right? So really their main focus is going to be worried that you're going to be asking for compensatory services, and they don't want to be in that position. So just put in writing that that's what your intent is. And most likely, I mean, every school is different, but most likely they'll be okay with that.
Lisa, can I ask, and you might have said this and I missed it. Is this, you're writing a letter? Do you call an IEP meeting? Is this like a handshake agreement? Is this something that we have to write into the IEP?
No, but some schools may say they do, right? So I would just start by writing the letter. And I would be, if they did want to have an IEP, I would be concerned if they remove the service from the IEP, that we call it sometimes the grid, right? That page that says what your services are. I wouldn't want that removed from the IEP. So I would be, but I don't think they would need an IEP. That being said, because your letter would be their documentation enough. And I don't think that it's required. I just think that some schools might ask for it.
And I have a question on what you just said about the grid, about them not removing the service. So would you recommend that they just put an end date on the service, but keep it in there so like, would they keep the end date for the whole year, or would they put the end date as of, like, I don't know, say it's tomorrow, and then if we have another IEP meeting, then we just readjust the date? What do you recommend on that?
Yeah, I would be really resistant to having them make this an IEP change. I'm not, because this is a temporary pause, right? And it sounds like, from what you said, you don't know if you want to pause a month or 3 months, right? You don't know. It's dependent upon how your son adjusts to his new situation. So I'm going to say that more than likely the letter should be good enough, especially if, you said you recently changed his settings, so the school's aware of the situation. So just using the words temporary and pause, and let them know that you're not going to seek compensatory services for the missed sessions, should be good enough.
And thinking about, like, I mean, maybe this is too much, but like a doctor's note to highlight that it's a health challenge and an issue if need be. Is that something?
It certainly can't hurt. And on the other side of this, when you're ready to resume services, you may need an IEP depending upon the specific circumstances that cause the pause are health related. So you may find that you want to have an IEP to add a health plan to your child's IEP to address whatever may be lingering. And at that point, you may want input from your doctor of what, not just for services, but just for your child's well-being and safety in the school day. What does the school do when, if A happens, we're going to do B, or what things maybe they might need to watch out for, depending on whatever the situation might be. So when the child does resume services in this scenario, you will likely want to have an IEP.
And Lisa, before we jump to the change of placement option, we did have a question from one of our parents ahead of time that relates exactly into the services question. And Lisa, you might be able to relate to this as well, but it says, I've been told by my IEP team that if I want my child to have fewer OT sessions or behavior sessions than the IEP requires, then the data has to back that up. If I feel like my child has too many therapies going on, can I decline the additional services? And then the school would provide a prior written notice. So it's a little different without the health crises, but.
Yeah, so a parent is, I mean, I know you know this, I know you guys know this, but a parent is a part of the IEP team. And if for whatever reason a parent doesn't like or doesn't agree with or doesn't feel it's appropriate the amount of therapy sessions, they absolutely can ask for them to be reduced. Now, on the school side, the school is going to want to make sure that they document that this is a parent request, and that the parent was informed of everything that they needed to be informed of, so that the parent can come back later and say, well, we had an assessment that said he needs 4 hours a week and you only did 2 hours a week, right? Whatever it is. So, but yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, you absolutely can. And a lot of times just putting in writing that, you know, that you understand the recommendation, but for whatever reason you're choosing something different, oftentimes is simply enough. They may ask for an IEP amendment, and in that amendment, I would have them put in the notes that, you know, OT recommended, just for example, OT recommended 2 hours a week, parent only consenting to 1 hour, kind of thing in the parent notes. That way, if the parent changes their mind and wants the additional time, it's documented that that was the school's recommendation to begin with.
Great. Thank you. So now we should probably discuss like a big question, the placement. Oh, sorry, Jason, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, let's jump into the placement question.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it may not, you know, I think as I think about like the different parents and conversations we've had, I know this is a question that people bring up often, right? In this case, it's related to health changes, but well, yeah, how do we think about placement change, like a temporary placement change? What are the benefits and risks of going that route?
Okay, so with a placement change, usually there would be an IEP meeting, or an amendment IEP meeting to change the placement. That's a big substantial change to the IEP. And there's a few ways to look at it. First, just so we all have on top of mind, the way that we always need to think about it is least restrictive environment. And there is a hierarchy where the least restrictive environment would be a general education classroom on a general education campus with no supports, right? So obviously here at Undivided, none of our kids have no supports, and then the most restrictive environment would be like a placement, like at home alone, or, you know, maybe in a residential facility or something like that. And there's a hierarchy. So if the child is in general education, and you need to make a placement change to, for whatever reason, maybe to lessen demands for a while due to like you're talking about here, a health crisis, the first thing you want to consider is if they can stay in their current placement with additional supports. Maybe they don't have a one-to-one and we can add a one-to-one. Maybe they need a shortened school day, whatever might work. If the team decides that that doesn't work, then next we can look at a special education classroom or a special day classroom, right? If you're moving a child from a gen ed placement to a special education placement, it can be hard to move the child back the other way. And the reason for this is because oftentimes the supports in the general education classroom were not appropriate. I would say that a lot of kids don't have the full supports they need. And so when they move to a special day class, they're going to do better. And so when you say, okay, our situation has improved, I want to move him back into general education, the school very likely is going to say, well, look how good they're doing in this special day class. This is clearly the appropriate placement. And the argument to that can definitely be, well, this just shows that he does need these additional supports in gen ed, right? So you can kind of turn it around on them. But just be aware that it could be a challenge to move them back. It's not impossible by any means. It's absolutely doable, but you just have to be, you know, ready that that's going to come up. The next, you know, place that you could put your kid right now is independent study.
Wait, Leeza,
yeah.
can I interrupt for a second and just ask
please.
something about the gen ed placement? Leeza, I'm curious if you've talked to your team about this and what their reaction was. I would love to know kind of what their approach was. Is it, and if it is temporary like this too, is this something that we still would need like an IEP amendment for, just to say very clearly, this is temporary with the intention of moving him right back in? But I would love to also, Leeza, just hear if you've talked to your team and what their reaction was when you brought up that option.
Yeah, so I wish this call had been 3 days earlier. No, I'm teasing. No, it's fine. It just has been kind of fast and furious. So yes, all of this definitely aligns with kind of how I approached it. I did send an email to the SPED director and was like, hey, like we need to revisit placement because right now it's just not working. And it was a big jump from gen ed with a bunch of support, a shared aid and RBT, like push in resource, like all of these amazing things. And now the new placement is a SPED class with support, full day in the SDC class, with the intent to have another IEP. We had an IEP meeting to change that placement. And then we're meeting again in December to see how his health is doing, to see if he's ready to move back. They put in writing that they are putting all of his gen ed services on hold and they'll be waiting for him when we're ready to put him back in gen ed.
Fantastic.
But my gut is telling me what you said. They're going to be like, but he's doing so good in this class. Why would we put him back in that stressful environment? And this is how he's acting. And how do you separate the health, you know, versus the behavioral? And yeah. Oh man.
Leeza, what do you have to say to that? What does Leeza need to prepare for that conversation?
It's not insurmountable. Okay. Yes, there's going to be some work on the back end. What I would do if you have the space to do it right now, if you have the ability, pay attention to what seems to be working in the special day class and make notes. So maybe if at the end of a day, the teacher shares some information with you about something that went really well, write it down. So in December, you can remember because you're dealing with his crisis right now. And then when you have that meeting, and he's doing great with these particular supports, then let's figure out how to move those supports into the general education classroom with him, because that is the least restrictive environment. So whatever was working, maybe they gave him a lunch buddy, for example. So it made recess and lunch better. Okay, great. Let's do that in the general education classroom, right? Like, so there are ways to kind of plan ahead for this. You know, just because he did better in special day class by their evaluation, it doesn't mean that general education is not the appropriate placement, right? The definition isn't better, right? So I think it's not insurmountable. I would keep notes though about what they tell you work.
And if it was working before, then there's no reason why when your son comes back and is healthy, there's really, just because he does well in one classroom, if he was doing well in the other, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able, I mean, this is just me thinking in my head, that's, you know, but I would think
I like the, you know, that move you're recommending, Leeza, around, identifying what's working for him in the new placement, and figuring out how to get that added into the gen ed placement when he's ready to go back. Because like documenting that well, Leeza, and having, I know you're such a strong advocate for him, like being able to bring that back in is maybe it's, I know I'm the optimist always, and I know these are hard conversations, but maybe it turns into an even better situation once things are in a place where he can go back into gen ed.
Right. And then if I really quickly just address the other two possible placements that come to mind, maybe not specifically, Lisa, for your specific situation, but for when there's a medical crisis. Independent study is an option right now. And just to put it out there, for our kids with IEPs, it's a mess and nobody's figured it out. And the services aren't being delivered, or they're being delivered in Zoom. So I just want to say it's right now not a great option for a lot of our kids with IEPs. I'm not talking about the homeschool charters. That's a little bit different. I'm talking about when your school district, whether it's LAUSD or Culver City or Inglewood or whatnot, is saying, okay, here's your independent study packet, go home and do this and turn it in on Friday. That's what I'm referring to. That was set up from COVID mostly. And then the very last option is home hospital. And home hospital is a placement option that is usually used for kids with significant health concerns, significant health issues. And it can also be used for kids that have, a lot of trouble with social anxiety or school phobia. And home hospital has to be recommended by a doctor. Most districts, all that I know of, but I'm afraid to say all, have a form they ask the doctor to fill out. But at a minimum, a kid's doctor needs to say this child should not be attending school right now. And then in home hospital, they will have a teacher come to your home. It is not a full day. It's a few hours a week. And the services that are in your IEP will come to your home. The special, the speech language pathologist, the OT, whatever those services are, will be delivered in the home. And it is much easier to move out of home hospital back to the original placement, because home hospital by its very nature is a temporary solution. It was designed to be temporary. So typically a child would move from wherever they are into their home hospital situation. Then when the doctor releases them to return to school, they return back to their original placement, unless there is something that has changed with the child that makes the original placement not appropriate. And then there would be an IEP. So I just wanted to mention that, because for some people in this situation, those possibilities may be right.
And are there like black and white parameters? I know that might sound silly in all that we do here, but are there black and white parameters for what kind of health prognosis would trigger this or enable this?
It's really, it's designed for significant health issues like cancer or immune issues, where being around other people is not okay. Or there are a lot of kids out there who really just will not go to school. And the parents have the therapy in place and they're working with doctors, but the school refusal is so significant that, the child takes off from campus immediately when they get there, or they start to have some sort of self-harming behaviors. But at the end of the day, it's the doctor. If the doctor feels that it's not safe for the child to attend school, it's very hard for the district to say, oh, we're not going to provide them the home hospital services. You never know what a district's going to do, but I can't imagine that they would directly go against a doctor. And home hospital is also delivered in some of the local hospitals. So if your child is inpatient at Children's Hospital, LA or Orange County or whatnot for a month, they will provide the services if the child's medically able in the hospital room. So
yeah, so it's an interesting option, especially if what the school district provides in terms of therapies and teacher support in home can enable, and again, it depends on the kind of health crisis, but it could be an interesting way to do a pause of gen ed.
Yeah.
Do you there was a comment that came in, it sounds like was an effective strategy for one of the families in the chat around the issue of labor shortage due to COVID and trying to work around in creative ways to ensure the child is thriving in school as best as possible, and having that as a potential reason to change placement or change services as a temporary thing. Any suggestions or thoughts on how to do that in a way where you don't, again, have this risk of later on the IEP team saying, well, this change has actually improved the situation for the child.
Yeah, the change of placement, and it sounds like we're talking about, again, from a general education placement to a special day class placement, or a SPED classroom placement. It can be difficult, like I said, to move back from special education to general education. But if the child moved from general education for reasons unrelated to their progress towards goals, right? Like Lindsay mentioned before, it's going to be really hard for the school to say that the general education placement is not appropriate. They're going to say it, but it's going to be hard for them to maintain that position if the change wasn't due to the child's progress or behaviors or whatnot. If the change was because of a labor shortage, or the change was because of a medical reason, as long as you're documenting that, you can even go so far as to ask them to include in the IEP notes that the child was making reasonable progress towards their goals in the general education environment and are being moved to special day class due to the labor shortage or due to the medical reasons. That'll certainly help when you go back and have that IEP. But I would expect there to be some pushback from the school. But, hold your ground, keep your notes, and do your best to document, so they have it, they have all the information there.
I don't want to go into a rabbit hole, just a really quick follow-up to what you just said, even though it's a little off, but about switching the placement for shortages. Can a school, just to reiterate, can a school ask for you to move into a more restrictive environment because of staff shortages?
No.
Okay.
No. And the way that I interpreted that question was it was a parent choice, and the parent can initiate that. But the school, I know that people don't, especially teachers who I absolutely love. The vast majority of teachers are amazing, and I learned so much from them. But it is a hard line. The laws, and I am not an attorney, so I'm not ever going to try to interpret the laws. But the way the laws are set up generally is the schools cannot not provide a service because of money or labor or whatnot. The school's responsibility is to go find that labor or go find that money, hire a private agency. The district, if they don't have enough OTs, I'm just saying out of the air OTs, then they could hire a private firm or private company to come in and provide additional services. Or, if they don't have enough paraprofessionals, then they need to hold job fairs or whatever we do now to find the right employees. But that can't be an excuse to not provide or fulfill a child's IEP.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that clarification was out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Leeza, are there any other questions that you have? Do you feel like, ready to go? Most importantly, ready to go and, take care of your son and what he needs right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in like fight or flight mode, type A personality mom, like trying to figure out everything. But I'm sure, Leeza, I'll be reaching out in December for this IEP meeting for some advice with all of my notes that I know to take now. So thank you.
Yeah,
I'm anytime.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
Leeza, sorry, I was going to say, Leeza, anything else too? I just want to make sure that you guys.
I think that from the whole conversation we had, the point that I would love to leave people with is if you make a decision to make any of these changes, whether it's pausing services or moving your child's placement, and you intend for it to be a temporary thing, just make sure you're documenting it, and let the school know that you're not going to seek compensatory, on the other side for the missed sessions. But make sure you put in a letter, short and sweet, that you're intending for this to be temporary until the other situation resolves itself.
I think that's the critical thing, right? Is that make sure in the letter this is a temporary thing for these reasons, and then you come back to address that in the future.
Right.
All right. Well, I really appreciate, Leeza, you joining us here for our first session and really getting to, into a topic that I know is obviously near and dear to your heart, and your willingness to share and be vulnerable with us and with our community, and to bring your perspective and insights. It's always helpful to, I think we all know this, but we so often forget it. It's helpful to know we're not alone in going through some of these challenges and these questions. And I just appreciate, Leeza, you taking the time to share with us all. And then you as well, Leeza. I know I get the great fortune of getting to see you work with our families every day, but you bring in your professional insights and your insights through your own personal experience. It's wonderful to be able to share that with the broader community. So thank you both.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.